Have you ever looked closely at the barcode on your favorite breakfast cereal or snack? Maybe it says "Made in Canada," and yet you thought it was a classic American brand. How did that happen? How did products that once proudly carried the stars and stripes start coming from just across the border, under the red maple leaf? This shift didn't happen overnight. In 2025, this trend is growing quietly and steadily. It's not just about saving money on labor costs. It's about bigger forces, like energy prices, automation, environmental rules, and even access to water. American companies aren't just moving north for cheap workers, they are moving to survive. So when you pick up your morning cereal or that ketchup bottle, ask yourself, is it really still made in America? Or did it quietly cross the border while nobody was watching? Let's dive in and look at 10 surprising examples of American brands now made in Canada. And why? Number 10. Shredded wheat. Shredded wheat has been a breakfast staple for generations. It was invented in New York in the late 1800s. Back then, it was made with wheat grown in the United States and packed in American factories for American families. Fast forward to 2025, and every box of shredded wheat sold in North America is now produced in Niagara Falls, Ontario. No big announcements, no headlines. The answer lies in energy. Niagara Falls offers cheap hydroelectric power, cutting electricity bills by about 15%. That's a big deal for factories that run heavy machines all day. On top of that, Canadian workers are paid less than their US counterparts, and the rules for running factories are simpler and easier to manage. Add to this that Canadian farmers get subsidies that lower the cost of wheat by nearly 9% compared to US wheat. Put it all together, and the savings add up to millions. What remains American about shredded wheat? Mostly just the name and the label. And if shredded wheat can quietly move to Canada, what other foods might follow? Is this the start of a bigger movement away from American soil? Number 9. Quaker Oats and Gatorade. Quaker Oats and Gatorade are two products you probably link with American sports and breakfast tables. But in 2025, both are mostly made in Peterborough, Ontario. Many US plants for Quaker Oats are running below full capacity. States like California and Illinois are facing rising energy and water costs, squeezing factory profits. Meanwhile, Peterborough benefits from lower municipal water fees and cheap hydroelectric power. This Canadian plant now produces Gatorade, Tropicana juices, and Quaker cereals, not just for Canada, but for much of the northern US market. Why make this change quietly? Because moving production to Canada saves money and avoids the spotlight. Canada's lower costs don't just mean cheaper products. They also mean companies can be more competitive without drawing attention to their moves. Number 8. Kellogg cereals. Think of iconic cereals like Corn Flakes, Frosted Flakes, and Mini Wheats. All were born in Michigan and have long been a part of American mornings. But by 2025, Kellogg's is shifting much of its cereal production to Belleville, Ontario. Several reasons explain this shift. The big Kellogg's plant in Battle Creek, Michigan has slowed down, and automation is cutting jobs. US labor unions are pushing for higher wages and better benefits, increasing costs. Consumers are also changing. Demand for less processed food is hurting traditional cereal sales. Meanwhile, Belleville had a $43 million upgrade in 2022, making it ready for more production. Ontario's corn and wheat growers receive provincial incentives that reduce costs by 12%. With hydropower, fewer labor disputes, and cheaper wages, the Canadian plant offers big savings, and it ships cereals into northern US markets without changing the packaging. Would you notice if your favorite cereal now comes from Canada? And if cereals are moving north, what's to stop other foods, or even medicines, from following? Number 7. Lay's, Doritos, and Cheetos. So what about snacks? Your favorite chips, Lay's, Doritos, and Cheetos, may no longer be made in the United States. In 2025, more of these snacks come from Canadian factories. American potato farmers are losing contracts to producers in Prince Edward Island and Ontario. Frito-Lay's US plants have faced strikes and delays. Shipping costs in the US have soared too. Canada's solution? 4 Canadian factories now supply snacks to northern US states. They offer cheaper energy, lower costs for raw materials, and less strict environmental rules. In some supermarkets in Michigan, Illinois, and New York, chips are Canadian-made, but don't say so on the label. How long before every snack aisle tells a different story about where your food really comes from? Number 6. Heinz ketchup. Everyone knows Heinz ketchup. That bright red bottle is a classic. But in 2025, more ketchup bottles come from Leamington, Ontario, than from U.S. factories. California tomato farms are struggling with droughts and heat waves, lowering harvests. Fertilizer prices in the U.S. remain high. Labor shortages after the pandemic have also slowed production. Leamington's plant processes over 250,000 tons of tomatoes yearly. Local farmers there get zoning protections and price support programs that keep costs down. Tomatoes grown in Ontario cost 5% less than the global average. Plus, logistics are smoother. Trucks cross the Great Lakes, avoiding some of the shipping delays common in the U.S. So if your Heinz ketchup says made in Canada, is it still truly American? Number 5. O. Henry bar. Remember O. Henry? That chocolate and peanut candy bar? It was once purely American, but by 2025 it's fully Canadian. What happened? The US version quietly stopped production in 2019, but Hershey Canada kept making the bar in Smiths Falls, Ontario. Now, the Canadian O. Henry is made with local peanuts, dairy, and corn syrup. The factory runs on hydroelectric power with automated lines. Canada's Export Development Corporation even helps sell it worldwide. So what's American about O. Henry now? Mostly just the wrapper and the nostalgia. Number 4. Chevy Silverado HD and GMC Sierra HD. These trucks are symbols of American strength and hard work, but by 2025, the heavy-duty Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra are built in Oshawa, Ontario. The Canadian government offered $1 billion in incentives to GM. Labor costs and union talks in U.S. plants made production more expensive. Oshawa now produces over 250,000 trucks a year, nearly 40% of all these trucks made in North America. But this isn't just about building trucks. GM is moving entire supply chains, engineering, testing, logistics, north of the border. This is not a short-term move, it's a permanent shift. Number 3. French Toast Crunch. That tiny cinnamon cereal shaped like little pieces of toast? Most people think it's American. But in 2025, every box is made in Canada. General Mills moved production years ago to its Canadian plant. Yet the branding stayed the same, so most buyers never noticed. Why? Tax breaks on processed foods, lower wages, and easier rules make Canada a better place to make cereal. And French Toast Crunch isn't alone. Many U.S. food brands are now made in Canada, but still carry the American label. So the cereal in your pantry might actually be more Canadian than the syrup on your table. Number 2. Shreddies. Developed in the 1930s by Nabisco, Shreddies was once a breakfast favorite in the U.S. Now, it's a Canadian product through and through. General Mills shifted production to Niagara Falls, Ontario. Demand for cereal is dropping in the U.S., while Canada offers better subsidies and fewer regulations. In 2025, Shreddies is sold mostly in Canada and the UK, barely remembered in the US. Canadian shoppers pay less for Shreddies than Americans pay for similar cereals. So who benefits the most from this change? Number 1. Ford Flex. The Ford Flex is a bold American SUV designed in Michigan and sold as an American car. But between 2008 and 2019, every single Flex was built in Oakville, Ontario. Over 80% of these vehicles were shipped back to the US, made in Canada, but sold as American. Why Oakville? Labor is cheaper than in the US, quality control is higher than in Mexico. Canada is the second largest exporter of vehicles to the US, after Mexico. Although the Ford Flex was discontinued, the Oakville plant now builds Ford and Lincoln electric vehicles. And all the supply chains and parts remain Canadian. So when you buy an American car, do you really know where it was made? So next time you pour your cereal, open a bag of chips, or climb into your SUV, think, is it still American? Or has it quietly crossed the border to Canada while no one was looking? If this surprised you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who still thinks they're buying American.